Welcome back. So great news. We just completed this task right here. So let's just end the timer and say, yeah, we're actually done with the task. Now there's probably more we could do, but I'm going to end it here because I feel that the repository has been unit tested and it is actually ready to do the get all products right here when we want to try that out. So let's move this into the done lane right here and pull in a new assignment right here. And the next one is going to be get all products from the web API, which means we're now going into the presentation layer, which means we're going to start building our REST API. So we have a few things here we need to complete. First, we need to kind of create a controller, and we're going to start there. And then before we can get everything running, we need to go into our startup file and figure out what we actually need to configure in order to start using this new system that we're building right here and create an actual REST API. So that's the steps. Now this lesson we're going to start simple. I'm just going to do test-driven step to kind of get the controller into my system. So let's jump into the code and see how we do that. Now before we do that, let's just start the timer again. And there it is. Boom, the timer started for get all products, and now it starts counting for us. We'll jump into the code right here, and here's actually a done product controller, or at least it's not all the way there yet, but this is the code I need. Now in order to create such a controller, you can actually do a very simple thing. I'll just try and right click right here and say add new scaffolded item, and then you can pick API controller, and you can even pick with read write actions and even using entity framework right here out of the box from writer. So you have a lot of great opportunities to kind of get a controller up and running. And let's just create the empty one. I just want to show you what it actually provides for you when you do these scaffoldings. It's pretty much, scaffolding is just templating an item, so creating it from a template, right? So let's try and see if I made an order controller right here that we might need later. Don't worry, I'll remove it later. I just want to show you what you get from that actual scaffolded solution right here. So when the scaffolding is done, you'll see you get a route that's set up to where we can kind of go to the controller. We'll get back to that later. You get an API controller which explains some extra information, an attribute that explains more information about the controller, and then you get an extension of an abstract class called the controller base. So there's not a lot of interfaces here, so again we need to do a little bit of magic to test all of this because, as I promised, I'm going to do everything test driven, so we're going to kind of figure out how we can do that. So now we kind of have an idea about how the controller should end up looking, and now we're going to try and do it test driven. So let's get rid of our product controller right here. There we go. Now if I go get down to the product controller area right here, I actually already created a test because I don't want to waste your time, at least not too much. So let's just go there and check out what's inside the test right now. It's just a product controller is of type controller base, and that's kind of just to test this part right here when we create that controller. So notice this time I'm not going to scaffold anything, I'm going to build everything from scratch. I think that's just as easy when you get into it anyway. So first step is we're going to try and create such a product controller. And the next step is we're going to ask if it's actually assignable to controller base. Here's the thing, controller base is actually from this package right here. So in order to get the controller base to test with, you need to kind of do a dependency and add a NuGet package right here to the one called Microsoft ASP.NET Core MVC. So you need that in order to do this test. So go and add that package if you don't have it already inside your test area down here. And the test area itself is just like we've done so many times already. I just created a map that, a package that kind of represents this guy, and then I created a project that represents this guy just with .test in the end. It's an xUnit project. I added a small folder right here because I know these are going to be put inside controllers, and I added my first controller test right here, which is just an xUnit test, nothing there. So now we got everything ready like we've already done a few times. Just go back and check the other videos if you want to really dive into that. Now we're going to try and create our product controller. And again, the first test is very simple. It's just to say I need a product controller and it needs to extend controller base. That's all I want. So let's try and run the test right now because we are running test driven. Of course, the first thing you do is prove that your test is failing. And well, I don't have to run the test actually. I can see I have a compile error right here. So of course the test can't even run right now. Let's create this. So I'll just right click and say create type. There we go. Now we got this public product controller right here. And now we should actually be able to run the test. So let's try and run the test now. We got an error. Of course we got an error because it's still not of the type controller base. So if I scroll down, it'll say, well, product controller is not of the type controller base as it should be. So go and fix that. So the next thing I'll do is I'll go back to the product controller, I'll add controller base, and again, this will not be available unless you got that package I just talked about a second ago inside the NuGet area right here. Remember to get that package. So now that that is in place, let's try and rerun the test. Run a little test. So we run the test and hopefully now it'll be green because we just completed that test. And again, now it should start to make sense, these simple tests right here. And again, do it. Even though you might not feel it's necessary, do it and run it test driven, because now I know in the future that my controller is the type controller base, right? So it's pretty easy thing to do. Now I'll just move it as the final thing. So I'll go in here and I'll say refactor and move this controller. I don't want it here, of course. I want it in another folder. Whoops, let's just try again. Refactor, move. Oh my God. So hard to hit that button. There we go. Move to folder. And I want to put it inside again. I don't want it to be in the test folder. I want it to be inside the controllers, inside the web API, under the actual solution folder of Onion presentation. There we go. So let's add it there. And now it's added to Git. And now it should be available right here. There we go. And now we'll go back to our product controller test. And of course, we'll rerun the test to make sure that we're still golden. And if that is the case, we just made our first test-driven setup right here to kind of create our product controller. And I know it's easier to scaffold it, but if you do it like this, you have it tested. So we need to do a few more things. We need to add a couple of routes right here and API controllers, which are attributes. So we'll look into that in the next lesson. But let's end it right here. We just got our first controller into our system. So that's it for this lesson. See you next time. Bye.